Namaste. My name is Preeti Chaudhary, and this is Campus to Corporate, live on LinkedIn via LinkedIn Live, powered by StreamYard. The topic for today is Campus to Corporate, as we already know, and we have a stellar lineup of one person from the academic industry and two leaders from the corporate world extensively dealing in people practices. And what better day than today to get this very important conversation started? We all talk about there is many a slips between the cup and the lip when it comes to education, employability, and all the rest of it. So without further ado and without wasting any more time, it is my pleasure to welcome everybody once again. Namaste. This is Campus to Corporate with me, your host, Preeti Chaudhary, and my guests today here are Raul Rodriguez, Ph.D., who is the Pro Vice Chancellor at Woxsen University in Hyderabad. And we have two corporate leaders, my dear friends, Adi Singh or Aditya Singh, who's the Director and Head of Talent Acquisition at Informatica Inc. And we have my other dear friend, Shiv Kumar, who is the HRBP for non-tech functions at Lowe's, India. Couple of quick reminders. This is a conversation which is interactive. So once you have heard the panel, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the comment section of this live. I will be picking those up at a later time in this program and get them directly answered by the stalwarts and the leaders right here. So with that, let me invite the first speaker. My friend Raul Rodriguez, who represents Woxsen University from Hyderabad, one of the newest and pioneering universities which is doing some great work in terms of higher education. Raul, let us have your thoughts onto the topic for today, which is Campus to Corporate, Opportunities and Obstacles. Over to you, Raul. Thank you.
Thank you, Preeti. It's a pleasure to be here with you and the other panelists. The topic is indeed interesting, challenging as well. There is no one solution fits all that I can possibly narrate. From an academic perspective, I can tell you we have various limitations in terms of adjusting to corporate demands, especially because of regulators, maybe the fast pace of the industry, maybe the slow pace that we may have at the academic side. But we, of course, try to adjust as fast as possible. However, this is limited by various factors, which I just mentioned. There are multiple opportunities we have in the picture. In fact, bringing Corporate Connect into our programs as faculty members or even with partnerships, doing dual degrees, maybe joint certifications are one of the options to adjust to the corporate scenario. However, having said this, academia is not to be blamed alone. It's a two-way street. So ultimately, the corporate scenario also has to understand that academia runs at a different pace, and rightly so. We cannot modify our curriculum and our learning outcomes every month at the same pace, of course. So considering this, and keeping this in mind, the challenges are multiple because it varies across industries. But I believe that there is a common ground, there's a sweet spot, and that sweet spot is always found in that willingness to understand each other and finding that of course, commonality. For example, enjoying delivery, which is one of the options we follow. So with this, I believe I summarize my points. So back to you, Preeti.
Thank you so much for those opening comments, Raul, and I am going to come back to you in just a bit. We have had the academics or the education perspective. Now it's time for the corporate leaders to speak and talk about their own experiences. So for that, let me first invite Adi. What are your views on this very controversial topic of campus to corporate, opportunities and obstacles in your own lived and observed experiences? Over to you, Adi. Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti. Again, it's a pleasure speaking to everybody and being part of the panel. So very interesting topic. And I'm sure there is enough written, enough read about it. Both corporate and campus have different ideology and different purpose they serve. I think so. It needs to evolve as we speak, and we need to understand leaving out the technical skills. There are the other emerging skills like self-management, communication, collaboration, presentation. How do you look at things little more different, problem solving, and few other things. That also plays a very very important part as the students move up the ladder, right? There is a saying, I think so, I read it somewhere, that students are not unemployable. They are just not maybe industry ready, right? I think that's what industry is trying to say and bring up to the table. And obviously, there are enough tie-ups which we will anyway speak through, which will help us get there. But I also understand academia has their own hands tied to some of the things which they can do and they can't do. But end of the day, I somehow always feel that the onus is on the students, right? The university can only do X. It's the X plus one which the student needs to get onto the table and do it themselves. So it's about being self independent and getting things done more independently. And as we speak further, we'll dwell on some of the areas once we speak further up. So back to you, Preeti.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for that, Adi. And I think that would pay to me meandering over to Shiv. Shiv, what do you think about the topic as well? Please set the tone so that we can get this conversation rolling. And before that, a quick reminder for the audience here, please be open and vocal. Leave your questions and comments into the comment section of this live. I will definitely take them up at a later point in time. With that, it is over to you, Shiv. Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti. Yeah, thank you for having me up as a part of this particular panel. So, I think, Raul and Aditya beautifully captured a lot of things that, I had in my mind. Having said that, there are a few things that I wish to share. First and foremost, I don't think the question is, what the curriculum constitutes or does not constitute. I think it is about what it omits, and that is one of the things that we as corporates also need to lend to the academics, so that it is far more relatable. It is also more important for us because at the end of the day, from a downstream perspective, it helps us as an organization. So that is, one of the most important aspects. And I think Raul touched upon the most important aspect, and that is the pace at which the corporates are changing, the pace at which the businesses are changing. It will be nice if academics could keep up with that, but I do understand the challenges that the colleges and universities face if they have to change the curriculum, so on and so forth. I think Adi was speaking about, or I think it was Raul speaking about collaboration, so on and so forth. And that is a good way. But having said that, I don't think it is doom and gloom. There are a lot of great students who graduate every year, but then it is also a challenge for us as college because most of them also receive international offers, and we lose them to other countries. So I don't think the question is that whether we are able to get students into the market who are absolutely brilliant. There are, and I don't think that is the case. That is one important aspect. The other important aspect, if I were to just look at the MBA colleges, and this is where perhaps we need to start thinking, is in other countries you need to have a certain number of years of work experience before you enter into a business school. But then that's not really the case in India, and that's where people start to struggle. And that is what I wish to highlight as well, that it is important that people come with certain years of work experience before they start studying business in business schools. So that is another important point that I want to highlight. And I'm sure as the conversation goes, we will touch upon various other areas which are important to bridge this particular gap. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you very much, my dear friends, for setting the context and the tone of this conversation. Raul, coming back to you, you are from Spain. You have been living and working in India for almost coming up to 8 years now. You are someone that has been into this field. You work for the top of the top institutions here in this country, and now you are the pro vice chancellor at one of these avant-garde and newest kid on the block that seems to be going real great guns with an excellent infrastructure. In this tenure of the last year that you have taken up at Woxsen, I would like to understand the kind of innovations you have spearheaded or you have seen around in your previous positions that come to an aid of being able to enable the students to become multifaceted and all-rounded. Take us through some of those, please, especially with all the innovation happening at Woxsen at this moment in time. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Priti. I will summarize it for obviously keeping the time in mind. There are three aspects which I like to highlight. One is internationalization, which I will talk about. Then is alignment with corporates, which we also have taken care of. And the last is research. And this applies to not just professors, but also students. Having said this, the approach is very simple. Higher education goal is not getting a job. That's a byproduct. Getting a job cannot be the ultimate goal of a degree. So considering this and keeping this into the perspective, we have to consider various aspects. One is giving international exposure. Woxsen University at the moment has 30 academic partners across universities. We have taken them from various rankings, but the motto is having variety in various continents and countries. So students go on exchange program very often, now online because of the pandemic. But alongside this, they also collaborate on projects and they get to work with their professors and their students. And that is happening on a daily basis. In fact, at the moment, there are 14 students on exchange program currently as we speak. So that is happening. And this is only from the MBA program I'm talking about. It's not considering the rest of the schools. Then if we talk about alignment with corporates, once again, this does not mean placements. I'm taking placements out of the picture here. Alignment with corporates will mean work with corporates on live projects, work with them on maybe case studies, do some actual service product with them and work on it, explore it, understand it, examine it, that kind of collaboration with corporates. Obviously, this will line into all other verticals, and getting a job has to be the byproduct of it, cannot be the goal of it. We cannot become greedy and go for the job as the main key aspect because that will not work. And the last part is research. See, across the university, and especially when it comes to management education, students before they graduate have to have a research paper published with a faculty member. And it's a requirement to graduate, otherwise they don't get a degree. And it's not just any research paper. There are certain categories of indexing they have to get it published on. So this might not, corporates may or may not, depends on the corporate, of course, appreciate it at first, but at least they will have gone outside and they will be outside the box and they will have been having that public domain available where their name has been put somewhere other than an A4 printout with a degree, which, yeah, they have achieved, and which is great, but ultimately, is there anything beyond it that they have done? And this is a great effort. A research paper is not an easy task. Professors struggle to do it. So if students do it, then corporates should appreciate that kind of effort being put. And keeping this in mind, I have noticed in India, there is generally, not talking all the jobs, of course, the demands of the corporates for the first job. And this is in line with what Shiv mentioned, and you're very right, MBAs abroad are for 3 years minimum of experience, whereas in India is no experience. Otherwise, it should be called MSc Management. That is how it is abroad. But keeping this in mind that there is no experience, so we cannot do anything about it, UGC regulations. Keeping this in mind, the job requirements for first jobs versus the actual skills of the students are not matching. If I ask a student to have knowledge of Java, C++, Python, then have 3 years of experience on top of that, know all the software list, then be able to do these projects, so many 20 projects, obviously they will not happen. It's obvious. So there will be a mismatch in the expectations versus the income. So this is an important point I think needs to be addressed, and I'm sure the fellow panelists here today will be able to address this since they come from that scenario. So back to you, Priti.
Thank you so much, Raul, and perfectly put right there. Sets the entire piece for the next bit, and I am going to move to Adi for that. Adi, 19 years long checkered career working for various corporates, going in and out of so many intakes and so many onboardings and so many alignments. What, in your experience, my dear friend, have been the gaps, and what has been the maximum sort of duration of this onboarding process, wherein maybe you've had to sort of bring the candidate up to speed or not? Any of those experiences from now at Infa or even before, I think they are pretty valuable for the audience today. So it is over to you, my dear friend, for your thoughts on those. Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti. So, yes, obviously, as everybody said, there are some amount of gaps because, and it's like it's not a one-way traffic; it's both sides, right? You ask anybody in corporate, they want a ready-made candidate who knows everything, should come with a horn on the head, and do everything whatever is possible. The expectations are high. A lot of the corporates don't want to spend too much time training people because people don't have patience. That's the direction a lot of people have moved towards. But the things which have worked well, is we work with some of the universities. Some of these universities have 6 months and 1 year internship program. So we get a lot of these students. It's like an on-the-job training for them because they would intern with us, and we train these students, and after a period of time, depending on the performance, after they complete their engineering and whatever, they get converted into full time. So it's a good mix of having theoretical and practical knowledge working with the organization. Also with us, they get into deep knowledge on the particular technology they work on. So there is a lot of hand holding. And the people who work with these are the ones which we've identified internally as, I think so, not everybody can mentor everybody, right? There is always a gap between, people who would want to mentor and who can't mentor. So we've aligned people who would train these people and then, move forward. So the internship model, I feel, is one of the best models, which I feel really helps. 6 months, 1 year, we work with some of those universities which help us do that. It helps us grow from that angle. Also, which in my experience, and I think so we were speaking before the call, is I feel mentorship is something which in the academia should look at very differently, specifically, in fact, looking at management students, because as what Raul said, some of them may not come with work experience. Now India is learning, and you have people who are with work experience now doing MBA. So if you look at that, I think the mentorship plays a very important part, because I mentor a few students for some of these MBA colleges. They are very good, very sharp. They know how things work. But when they start interning and they start working for the first time, they require somebody else's input. I have some of the students with me who speak to me and say, "This is what is happening. I think this is not meant for me. I can't do this." Then I tell them, "Okay, look at this from a very different angle." Because since I've worked in the industry, I'm able to give my perspective. So some amount of hand-holding, but it has to be a collaborative effort, right? We've also signed, in Informatica, we've signed a couple of MOUs where we train some of the students on technology of Informatica, because Informatica is a product which is used in a lot of other technology company, and the student may or may not even get placed in Informatica, but gets placed in another company which uses Informatica as a product. So MOUs, these connects, mentorship, more corporate connects with the academia is what I have seen in my experience. And some of the sessions, right? You are part of with me in some of the IM sessions which we do. I think that's where we all share our experience, and some of them till date, I'm sure, ping you and ping me of saying, "This is what I'm doing. What do you think? Does it work or not work?" I think these inputs really help some of the students to go further and faster in their own career. Back to you, Preeti. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Adi. Very deep and diverse experiences shared by you right there. And with that, we have our first question. But before I go there, I want to move up to my dear friend Shiv. And Shiv, in your in your career of working with various domains, so you've been in the financial sector, you've been in the retail software industry, and all the rest of it, does a candidate working for these different domains, do they show sort of different traits? What is your experience in terms of how learning is perceived by different people at different career points from different domains? Over to you, Shiv. Thank you.
Thanks, Prithvi. I think that's a very important question, and I want to take a step back. When we speak of the curriculum, when we speak of whether it's engineering, whether it's MBA, it really doesn't matter, and that is where the big gap is, according to me. Today, I don't think we learn to learn, but we learn to pass in colleges, and I think that's the biggest gap that I have seen when I interact with students. Because most of the times it is about clearing that particular examination, ensuring that I get like a first class or a distinction in that particular subject, but not really about how am I to use that particular concept or theory into application. And I think that is where it lacks, and that's when we start speaking with them as corporate folks, we see a huge gap. So they may get into the organization, but at the end of the day, in the initial few months, they struggle because what they have learned, it was the theory part of it, but then they have not unlearned a lot of it and have moved into corporate, and there was this gap of learning to learn itself to start with. So that's where they start to struggle. And I think if that is one thing that can be fixed in the curriculum itself, it will go a long way. Now, answering your second part of the question, do we see a difference in these sectors? I think it's all the same to me when I look at a student, irrespective of which sector I'm hiring for. At the end of the day, it's going to be about, let's say, cognitive skills. It's going to be about analytical skills, lateral thinking, ability to adapt, so on and so forth. So those remain common irrespective of whichever sector. But the biggest gap for me is learning to learn itself. Preeti, back to you.
Thank you, my dear friend, for that. And I have a question from Mohini Murudkar, and this is for the HR folks in this panel. Adi, it is addressed to you specifically, but Shiv, I would invite your input as well. And then I will move back to Raul for another set. So hang on, let me pull up the question for you folks right here. I will read it out for you as well. So Mohini says, my question is for Aditya, and we established both of you, please. Does corporate mindset changing from hiring from top campuses to hiring top talent from across campuses? Over to you, Adi, first, and then I will move to you, Shiv. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. I believe the colleges which I go to is relevant to my organization. While we rank and rate colleges according to their proficiency, I don't want to get into that. There are enough conversations on those topics. If you see, I'll take my own organization's example. We did a hackathon, a codeathon last year, and the students who cleared, we offered them internship. So there was no criteria of looking at specific colleges which fits the from an organization perspective. Some of the organizations, don't want to name some of them, have gone ahead and built their own test online. So you just log into some of the companies and give the test. If you clear it, they will hire you. If you don't, they don't. You have assessment tools where they've gone away from coding and look at gaming as an assessment tool to go ahead and hire folks. So organizations are stepping away from only quote unquote looking at premier institutes. They're looking at which are the institutes, one, which will give you the stickiness to the organization, because stickiness plays an important part in the organization. You're able to retain. Secondly, are the people who do well, who stay in the organization, are they coming from that organization? So data intelligence, coming everything together, will give you a lot of inputs, which will make sure that you are able to decide from where you want to pick up the students from. So it's not stuck to some of those colleges. It's pretty much wider. It's more open. It's a level playing field for most of the students now. Shiv, you want to add?
Sure. So I completely agree with Aditya. I think the mindset is changing for sure. And a lot of corporates these days look at codathon, hackathon, so on and so forth, so that there's a level playing field. Completely agree. Having said that, while the mindset is changing, again, it's a continuous process. So will it change overnight? The answer is no, it's not going to change overnight. Will still people prefer going to a set of colleges? Absolutely. That is going to remain. But I think the change is visible, which is a good start. And a lot of corporates, including ours, we believe that we need to go out and provide everybody a level playing field. So that gradual shift is happening, but I wouldn't go so far to say that it is going to stop overnight or things like that. It is still going to remain. And just another thing to add, and I think in a way I don't want to take away from the folks who graduate from these colleges either, for a simple fact that maybe they did slightly better in certain examinations to get there. Having said that, doesn't really mean that they are best as compared to the others. But I think the corporates are changing the way they are looking at talent these days.
Thank you for that, Shiv. And I am a testimony to that fact myself. From a tier 2 city, Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh, I see scores and scores of talent all around me. It's just that it is not studying in those premier and those pedigree institutes, but doesn't mean that small cities, tier 2, 3, 4 Bharat, doesn't have talent, as you rightly said. It's about discoverability. It's all about putting yourself out there. Otherwise, how are the corporates or the HR going to know that you exist in a city called Katni, Damo, Jabalpur, Sagar, Betul, wherever it is, So it's all about, I guess, discoverability as well. And with that, I will move on to Raul. Raul, a quick question from you, please. Share your story to whatever level you're comfortable at of when you were transitioning from your own studies and getting yourself prepared for a job. In a nutshell, if you are able to recount that journey, I think it will be a lot of value add for our audience here in terms of your own experiences. And here we are today. You are working and you're doing great things. So over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Priti. See, my story is one where professors disregard you because they don't really care whether you get a job or not. And it's fair. It's not their job to care either. It's a story of basically having philosophy, especially Stoic philosophy, as a focus. That taught, of course, from school, which was one of main key subjects, and that kind of carry on forward in life. In university, where I have my studies, especially with looking at Spanish versus European general education, your job is to attend classes, if you want to. Of course, there's no attendance. So if you want to attend classes, that's great. If you pass exams, you get your degree. If you complete the projects, you, of course, benefit. But nobody's going to track you down. Nobody will really ask you questions. And certainly nobody will give you a job. That is for sure. Keeping this in mind, how you do the transition when nobody's supporting you, because of the fact that nobody's supporting you, students feel the need to actually train themselves and upskill themselves to a point where they fit the corporate demands. There is no spoon feeding anywhere. So considering the spoon feeding is nil, you have to really struggle, and you have to go down the lane of examining your own abilities versus the corporate demands at that point in time. In my case, I came down to India. So obviously an additional challenge was placed, which is the cultural shock on various grounds. Anyway, the cultural shock may not be there for many people, but ultimately my adjustment came from the feel of, I believe, resilience, you can say. I come personally, family-wise, I come from military background. So believe me, nothing has been ever handed to me at all. And it is known to many people that in so-called the West, okay, West meaning Europe and America, but the West, we are kicked out at the age of 17, 18. So it's true, I can confirm that. I was myself kicked out, so it happens. But it happens for a reason, because they don't want you to stick around for too long, so you become dependent. So that independence is given much earlier, forcefully. And that is, I believe, what has driven me towards that. Why academia? I joined academia to teach, basically. Delivery is what I was passionate about, so I did that. But academia has various aspects to it. One is administration, which is in the one I am into right now. So it's a field which will not be as rewarding prima facie because you are not talking to the students all day long as you used to do before. So that one-to-one interaction will reduce. However, you get to understand how the overall higher education system operates and how can you help improving that. Ultimately, we are dealing with people's lives, let alone jobs. I'm excluding that from the picture currently. We are dealing with humans and their lives, their expectations, their dreams. They're investing a certain amount of money somewhere or the other. Even if you go to IIMs or IITs, they're investing a certain portion of their life. So that particular stream in higher education, that those years in the university, either you might enroll the university, but the university might not enroll in you. It's a two-way street. So you have to really focus on what you are there for. Are you there to chill around the campus, or are you there to really work for those number of years and get an output? An output, once again, I reiterate, is not a job. The job is a byproduct. It cannot be the output. In any institution, not just in private or public institutions, any field, if we take job as the main motto, so after 2 years I'll get a job, this is my only goal, huge problems will arise. Then the whole degree process is a waste of time. Then there's no point teaching in the first place. We can just give jobs. It is much faster for us and much easier for everybody. We'll call, maybe, I don't know, I can ring up Shiv and say, hey, I have very good students here. They're just enrolled. Why don't you give them a job right away? We can just avoid all the professors. I don't need to employ a professor. I don't need to buy books. Why? No point. We can just give them jobs directly, much faster. And then, of course, after 2 years, I'll give them a printout and they take it with themselves. And then I'll say that, yeah, you're having a awarded degree. Congratulations. That resilience is what I feel, and that is my opinion, looking at various institutions across, not just in India, worldwide. Students lack that resilience. They lack that hunger for doing something. They just don't want to do something. They think they do, but they actually don't. They just want money. That's it. They do not really want to make a difference and do something meaningful. When you have that bandwidth of having that hunger to do something meaningful, that is what actually will drive you towards success. And obviously, I believe corporates want successful people. They don't want pawns. They will want somebody who will be innovative, proactive, autonomous. That is what everybody wants. And that will not happen in the current scenario because we are spoon-feeding people. That is the biggest challenge. And this is what my journey has been about, of analyzing pros and cons of everything and driving myself towards that autonomous spectrum where I don't depend on anything or anybody, up to, of course, a certain level. I depend on my wife, but that is a different case scenario. That is an emotional dependence. But beyond that, life-wise, does not happen. And I believe this is the sweet spot, the silver lining to higher education, where it happens. Back to you, Preeti.
Thank you. And first of all three of you have military background behind you. So thank you for your family service to our respective two countries, Spain and India, because Adi and Shiv are also progenies of military family here in this country. So thank you for that. Brilliant insights, Raul. Amazing journey, hands-on, practical experience. Couldn't have sort of heard it better than that being said. That brings another very good question in my mind, and this time it is for Shiv. And quickly before I go there is another question which I will take up just as soon as I'm done asking Shiv. Shiv, what is the importance of having people around you that you can talk to or that you can leverage from? What do you think this whole intersectionality of depending on others around us, where does that take us? What are your views on that particular topic? Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Preeti. I think, it's a great question because at the end of the day, if I were to call it networking or, finding a mentor in the industry, whatever we want to call it, it's absolutely, absolutely critical. And that needs to start right from college, at some point in time. And somewhere, if we are able to incorporate that into our college curriculum, or we can call it curriculum, we can call it anything that we like. But at the end of the day, I think that becomes very, very important. And once we get into corporate, the biggest thing that one learns is to have a great network. The success or the failure of that individual after skills is the network itself. And as one keeps stepping up in a corporate, on the corporate ladder, you realize that most of it is networking. And at the end of the day, that's such as life. We may say that skills are important, so on and so forth. Absolutely. I'm not denying that aspect, but networking is important. And it becomes even more difficult for people who are introverts. I would also like to accept that I'm an introvert, and it is difficult for people like me to network, go out there into conferences and discussions, and have chats with my colleagues and peers from the industry. It is a challenge, but at the end of the day, I only wish that back in college this was something that was taught to me. I would have networked better. So can't agree more with you. It's important that people network. It's important that people find a mentor early on, and I think Aditya is doing a great job being a mentor to many students in the country. So I think that's very, very important, and one needs to find a mentor, one needs to network. There's no taking away from it, and it's not just in early stages of your career, it is throughout your corporate life. Over to you, Priti.
Absolutely well said. And I couldn't second that thought myself, because as you know me, I totally believe when it is said your network is your net worth in any case. So thank you for sharing those views. And with that, Adi, this question is for everyone, but I am going to start with you, my dear friend. And this question is a one that maybe doesn't have a clear cut answer, but I'm sure Sanjay would like to hear your views on. I initiated the first industry academia seminar in 2005 and many later, but after 16 years, till now, we are not able to change the mindset of both parties. Why is that so? Says Sanjay to all the panelists. Adi, it is you first, and then I will move on to the next. Over to you. Thank you.
I feel I feel sometimes it's the hand which is tied from an academic perspective. I'm sure Raul will agree on that part. The other is I believe for a fact that we moved leaps and bounds to what it was, because I remember when I did my masters from Singh maybe 20 years back, there was no concept of mentorship, industry connect, internships and a lot of other things. Internship was there, but I know what everybody landed up doing internship. So there is more. There is change. It's not moving at the pace of the way the rate of technology is moving, but there is change. As I talked about, right, the internship. Engineering colleges giving 6 months, 1 year internship. That itself is a huge change, which gives the corporate enough time for them to train the resources. And there are now a lot of universities which have looked up as mentorship programs. There are a lot of universities which have looked at corporate folks coming and teaching some of those students. We have more connects with the universities than anything more. There is also a coming of realization in a lot of the universities. I'll take from an engineering and computer science standpoint, they realize for a fact that if you look at a lot of the companies, the basis is Java, right? Any offshoot of Java is they've added to some extent in the curriculum, but also telling their students to guide them to go ahead and train them. There is a lot of training which is happening for students when they before they even step into the corporate side of what to expect, right? There has been a lot. Yeah, maybe if you ask these questions to Raul will say from a different country standpoint, things what we are doing today is not at the pace what it should be. But we're moving an elephant. It takes time, but I still feel the direction is the right direction, but the pace needs to be faster, Preeti. We're not there from a pace perspective, so I completely agree on that part. But there is an intent both from a corporate standpoint to tie up with the universities to make sure that end of the day both are in a win-win situation. And as I said, as what Raul also spoke about, the problem is positioning, ideology difference, right? A lot of universities push and say 100% placement, top this thing. Wrong way. You need to study to learn and then decide what you want to do. There has to be a concept for some of the students to become more entrepreneurs, right? Why can't we have more entrepreneurs? The logic is very different. Understanding is different. Somewhere that mindset needs to change, and I hope it changes as we speak. But there is an intent from both sides to get together. Henceforth, we are all speaking, right? So, thanks.
Absolutely, Adi. Thank you. And with that, I think let us get the academia perspective as well in terms of Raul. What are your thoughts on this particular mindset? Why do you think not much or too little or too much is happening in this area? Over to you, Raul.
I agree with Adi in his points. I mean, there is little to add in that. Obviously, changing the entire system is going to take time. It's not an overnight job. The pace is obviously slow, and that is how it is. You can see that in various aspects. For example, according to the latest UGC guidelines a couple of years back, everybody has to be a PhD holder to teach. Now, do we expect architects to have a PhD? All right, fine, you want a PhD, but then you will not have a good architect, because the guy will have done BArch, then probably, not likely, but maybe had done MArch, and if the guy is good, will work in a firm for some years, 20 years, and then go and teach, because he may like to teach. Many people do. Now, are we expecting this guy to get a PhD at the age of 50? Quite unlikely. Similarly applies to all fields. Management, fine. I can, for example, Shiv, when you choose to retire, if I told you retire, okay, retire is a very abstract concept, but let's assume that you do want to retire at some point, and you said, yes, let's go into academia. For some reason, you may like to teach as well, and you would like to go into academia or business schools or whatever might be the field. The dean or director of that institution will tell you that is great, wonderful experience, but wait, you don't have a PhD. Where is your PhD? You cannot teach. Your experience is really useless, basically. You can be a visiting faculty, but I will not hire you full time. That creates lots of difficulties, because if we do this, we are killing the system. And most countries don't have such policy. There are professors of practice, and there are professors who are scholarly professors, who have PhD and have done the undergrad, postgrad, PhD, all academia life. Others have gone in the industry and then come out of it. Having said this, in India there is a concept, and I'm sure you all agree, because I've seen it across the years, and I spent 6 years in Mumbai, where I've seen a lot of nonsense happening. And the perception I've received is that those who go into the education system, especially schools or colleges, is because they're good at nothing else. They go there because corporate won't fit them. It's too stressful for them, or maybe their skills are not adequate enough so they can teach. That is a wrong mindset. If we think that people who go into academia because they are good for nothing else, ultimately we are generating that mindset and increasing it further. And in fact, many professors are highly skilled and highly qualified. They might not want to work in corporates, which is all right. I personally never had an interest to really go into corporate life and start doing projects, though I could have done it, but I just don't feel the appeal. That does not mean that if tomorrow a lightning strikes me and says, yes, I'll go into corporates, I will join, and there is nothing is going to change. My life, I will do some tasks, I will work on targets, just like I'm working now, and fulfill the criteria. That mindset is, I think, more important to change than the regulations. Regulations are there. People may not respect it. Most of them will not respect it, and that happens across countries. But ultimately, the mindset of people have to change. Not corporates or universities, but in general, society has to change that mentality. And I think, well, we have all seen this in the past during our studies, and now currently you can see it. If you interact with professors, you will see that as well. it will be part of their overall perception of the world. Back to you, Preeti.
Preeti, can I just add?
Beautifully, and adding, absolutely. Please. And then Shiv, you as well, please, if you would like to add something, perfectly fine. Over to you, Adi first. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry for just jumping in. One thing which on PhD, Raul spoke about, the problem on PhD, and this is my biggest problem, is a lot of people end up doing PhD, they're not solving anybody's problem. Like, what are you solving from a from a nation standpoint or from a world standpoint? They're doing it for the sake of doing it, and Raul knows it better, right? After a period of time, you need that to be have to be pegged at a particular level within the university. I think that people need to make sure that they are solving a practical issue when they're doing PhD. India has the maximum number of PhDs as we speak, actually, if I'm not wrong. But are we solving anything? No, we are not. Look at some of the topics are pretty varied. So if people can be a little more practical when they start doing some of those PhDs, work with the corporates, there can be a lot of things which can be done. So sorry, that was on my mind. I thought like this.
Sure. Thank you, Raul. Just one moment. I would like to first thank you for that umbrella sort of perception that you brought to the table, Raul, earlier on. Speaking from your own experience, your observed experience, bringing in an international flavor into the whole thing. So absolutely brilliant. And now it is back to you for your comments again. Since you said you wanted to add something, over to you. Thank you.
I'll not take much time. I know Shiv comments are pending. Just to add to at this point, there is something which you missed, and I'll tell you from we can say internal intel. We can say normally your PhD guides, the ones who are supposed to guide you, they know less than you. By the way, just to keep it in mind. In fact, sometimes they know nothing, absolutely zero about the topic, and the topics of PhDs are normally very esoteric. Bibliometrics of XYZ, which takes me nowhere. Yes, I'll get a very nice printed thesis, but nothing will come out of it. Absolutely zero. I know that for a fact. And then we will, on top of that, publish a research paper, which will go in some database, which nobody will read. The author himself will not read it. And it will go into some database. And then we expect other people to read it and implement it, and all this paraphernalia gets built in. So just to complement your views, it's on the same line. Obviously, from my case, comes from an internal approach, but it's on the same lines. Shiv, you wanted to say something. I interrupted you.
Before I get to that, though, one quick point as well, Adi. Why UGC and AICTE mandates a PhD now is a must if you would like to teach into any college, university, or institute. So that is what Raul was sort of trying to say earlier as well. Shiv, my dear friend, thank you for your patience. It's all over to you for your views on this very heated and very good sort of a debate that we've been having over here. Over to you, my dear friend. Thank you.
I don't think I could do justice to what Aditya or Raul said. They've covered the points beautifully, and I just want to remain optimistic that this is only going to get better. And back in 2005, like the gentleman was mentioning, yeah, I mean things were different, but then today, like Aditya was mentioning rightly, there are so many programs that corporates run with colleges and universities directly, whether it is to change the curriculum, whether it is to be a guest faculty, so on and so forth. So I think things have changed. I don't completely agree that the things haven't changed as such, but it is also about how rigid the college is. I have interacted with a lot of colleges, maybe affiliated to XYZ universities, but then they take that initiative to have these interventions in place, whether it's a faculty development program, whether it is long internship programs that Aditya was referring to, or anything else for that matter. It is the intent. If the college or university doesn't have the intent, then there's something that can be done. But there are a lot of colleges which are doing this. So I wouldn't agree with it in totality, though.
Absolutely, Shiv. Thank you so much for that. And time enough to wrap up this discussion, because there will be no end to this. We are not finding solutions here. all we are doing is drawing various perspectives, giving the audience food for some thought, and then this is an evolving and ever going sort of a conversation. But let me pull up a question, and I think inputs are required from all on the panel on this one, and it will be up on the screens in just a moment. This is a two-part question. Number one says, how does one choose a mentor without any formal mentorship or apprenticeship program in the organization without breaching on the workspace time of the seniors? So let's take that one, and anybody who would like to take that first, please unmute your mic and go for it. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
Shiv, go ahead.
Go ahead, Aditya. It's fine. All right. So, I just, want to keep it very simple. The only simple solution to this is ask. There is no other way, to, figure out whether the other person is willing to mentor you or not mentor you. And most of the organizations may not have a mentoring program. I mean, that's perfectly fine. But then it really doesn't mean that you cannot walk up to your senior or your peer, for that matter, and ask for mentorship. The one thing that I do want to add is not every you will not find everything in one mentor. So if you are going to go to multiple people for mentoring on multiple aspects, it's all right. I mean, it's all right to go ahead and ask for help. But step one is nobody's going to come and ask you that I want to be your mentor. It is about you going up and asking, what's the max that's going to happen? They're going to say no, but that's all right. So step one, please go ahead and ask. Over to you, Preeti.
Addy, all yours, my dear friend, because you wanted to say something as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to write down some of the comments. I think, as what Shiv said, the first thing is to ask. If you're not going to ask, and if you're going to play it in your mind that this person is pretty senior and will not have time for me or this thing, so it doesn't happen. So as Shiv said, worst thing is the person turning around and say, I don't have time, or maybe we need to find time. Remember, these conversations, since I mentor some of these students, is, and I think so Raul spoke about it earlier, not everybody wants to mentor, right? One is that people need to realize the fact. Secondly is you need to understand why. Like, I do it because when I was studying, I never got enough. I didn't have a mentor. So I feel that I want to give back to at least to the students, because I still feel that a lot of them have capability. So secondly is see who fits you as an individual, right? Is as simple as that. You feel that the mentor will be someone who will be able to solution them because he or she carries themselves in a particular way. A lot of times mentorship can also be done by who might be somebody senior but much younger in experience, right? That is the other one. Secondly, there's also a concept called reverse mentoring, and I have it in my own organization. There's someone in my team, she reverse mentors me in some of the things on technology, because I feel some of the places I may be away. So it keeps me in a very different tangent of looking at things a little more differently. But as you said, people need to find time, and if they are reasonable to you, they will find time. Nobody can turn around and say, I don't have, in a week I can't find 20 minutes for you. That would be really, really too much. Preeti.
Thank you so much for that, Addy. And I think the second part I will take to Raul first, because this directly sort of touches upon that part. How does one enable campus hires to network with an objective? Raul, over to you. What do you advise your students, the first batch that will be coming out very soon? Thank you very much.
Well, as Shiv mentioned earlier, networking is critical. So if students are trained in networking, I don't think campus placements or hirings are required anymore, because they themselves will get a job way before the degree is over. What I initiated last year with our students is we do LinkedIn training programs, which pretty you know about. So we train them on LinkedIn skills, how to shape the profile a little here and there. Obviously, we are not experts on LinkedIn, far from that, but obviously we know better than them in that case. So we train them on that way. and we push them to speak at conferences. In fact, one of our students, MBA students, got selected to speak at a TEDx event organized in Hyderabad. So an MBA student speaking at a TEDx event with no job experience prior to that, I feel it's quite an achievement, because the person will gain confidence, will be exposed to the audience, you will develop these skills, and obviously will network ultimately. And we are looking at this. We are looking at them speaking at international conferences, then presenting papers in that case, doing all these activities that exposes them to their fears. And even what Aditya mentioned in terms of reverse mentoring, will you ever imagine that a student will mentor a professor? We do it, in fact. I bring students to my cabin, and obviously I find the time for that. I bring them, and they do mentor me. Mentor does not mean gossip. Mentor means mentor on a particular topic, whichever it might be. They come from a different generation, of course, and it's not just us who have something to teach them. They also have something to teach us. In fact, I learned a lot in Hyderabad, so my students will be surprised, but they somehow help me learning the local language, in this case Telugu. Though obviously I am slow processor in that range, because I had enough with Marathi in Maharashtra, but I'm trying. So trying is part of the process, and they do teach me these things. They do teach me all their culture. They of course work across Indian culture. Though my wife is also, by the way, a Ph.D. in history, but not that it has a huge effect, but she's extremely well versed with the Indian history, and that, of course, has come from her. Still, I ask my students about various aspects of the culture and history and various facts, not just academic related fields. So that reverse mentoring happens. And when your professor likes you, in this case, you build a relationship, his or her network comes to you. So again, placement goes off, because it will be just, if I ring up Shiv or Adi and tell them, I have a very good student, I think will fit you. It will be one-to-one reference. I will not push. I have the student. You want him? Great. You don't want him? No problem. It is, just give him the chance. That is what will be. And this is how we operate. That is how I personally operate. And I like to operate things. And I believe this is what will make a difference. But this is very difficult to implement in all colleges, extremely difficult. It will not happen, because local colleges cannot afford it. And IIMs, IITs, students drive the show, they drive the placements, and companies are dying to come to IIMs for some reason, thinking that the best of the best will be there, which is not true, by the way. But anyway, they come there. And you all know how it is. So networking is going to be critical, but networking has to be kind of tweaked a little in the system in order to actually make an effect.
Thank you, Raul. And likely and correctly you said networking has to be intentional as well, my dear friends. So very well said. Now that brings me to the very last question, and the holy grail of all questions for the HR leadership in any corporate. And I think both of you already realized what that question is going to be. You are, both of you, my dear friends, Adi and Shiv, are an elusive sort of species when it comes to catching hold of. So, couple of tips from you, Adi, first, in terms of how does one network and build a relationship with the HR fraternity. And then secondly, I am going to go to Shiv for his inputs on the very same question, because I think this is the most important holy grail question that is on everybody's top of the mind in any kind of an intervention that includes any HR person at all. So over to you, Adi. Thank you very much.
So how do you network with a HR person from any company? So obviously one is, there are multiple ways. From a networking standpoint, the best and the easiest way is look at alumni network, your own alumni. They will not shy away from you. So first, use your alumni network to connect with people around. Identify some of the people who impress you with the articles and few other people, and write back to them of seeing what worked and what didn't. Give your perspective. End of the day, people want people who can give them a mirror image of what they think, right, than anything else. So it's important that you connect through LinkedIn or any other places to connect. But alumni being easier because your alumni will not at least push you away to some extent. Maybe out of 10 emails, maybe 2 will respond, but the 2 might be interested to help you further up. It's a consistent effort. It's not a one-way street, but connect with people who come to your colleges, have some context to connect with people. If there are some common grounds of discussion, the person will also be interested in connecting with you. Connecting for the sake of connecting doesn't help any purpose, but connecting with a reason of solving which is relevant. I'm sure people are authentic enough to respond back to people. But as I said, a lot of mails, a lot of in-mails, sometimes it gets lost in translation. So please be ready for that. Shiv, you want to add?
Yeah, so I think Adi has covered it beautifully, but I also want to mention that you would connect with an HR person or network with an HR person, like any other person. Yeah, to start with, it's not different. And the other misconception that I have seen is that we need to start networking with HR people. I think that's a misconception in itself to start with. You need to network with everyone. And I would recommend strongly that if there is an area of interest, for example, if it is, let's say, machine learning, then find people to network with in that particular space, and they will help you connect with people in their network. Could be an HR person, could be another hiring manager in that particular space. So my suggestion would be, don't restrict yourself, to an HR person alone. Be open to the idea of networking with anybody and everybody. And I think, like Adi was rightly mentioning, have an objective as to why you are networking, because trust me, we receive a lot of LinkedIn connections and emails and so on and so forth. So sometimes it may get a little difficult. So, expand your network, expand your objectives. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you very much for those perspectives, Adi and Shiv. And very quickly to reiterate, diversity, it is in your connections, in your networks, in your voices, in your learnings. Absolutely spot on with the networking right there, my dear friends. As a closing comment and as a takeaway to this wonderful discussion, which I have thoroughly enjoyed, Raul, couple of pieces of advice for students that are going to be job ready in the coming years, this year, next year. Very quick sort of bullet point advices, and with that, I will then go on to Adi and then go to Shiv. But first to you, Raul.
Mine is very simple. Get busy living or get busy dying. You choose. That will be that for me.
Brilliant, bravery, and absolutely to the point. Thank you very much. Adi, it's over to you.
Learning, I feel, plays a very important part. So be a constant learner, irrespective of what experience you carry. If the day you think you know it all, somebody will come and pull the chair out behind you. So please be ready with that. So please be a constant learner.
Thank you, Adi. And it is over to you, my dear friend Shiv, for the final comment. Thank you.
So I just want to say that the post-pandemic world is going to be very different. So what is required is openness and flexibility, because there is no rule book. Everyone's learning, so be open to the idea of flexibility. Over to you, Preeti.
Thank you. And folks, my dear audience, with that, we are at the end of this Campus to Corporate Opportunities and Obstacles. This session has ended, but the conversation has not. Please feel free to reach out to all of us on LinkedIn to dive deeper or clear some points which might have sort of come into your minds post this discussion today. So with that, it is from all of us here on the panel with your friendly host Preeti Chaudhary saying our stay safe, goodbye, and Jai Hind. Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Adi, and thank you, Shiv. Take good care. Thank you.